Hey, Pete here for Studio Live today, and welcome to the second video in our series here where I'll be breaking down the EP that I've just recorded and released, which I made entirely in GarageBand on the iPhone. So in the first video, if you haven't checked that out, I took you through the instruments and the interface and the microphones that I used to record it. And in this one, I'm going to be going through track 1 on the EP, which is called In Time. It's a short 2-minute track with some guitar, piano, vocals, drums. So this will be a bit of a breakdown video to show you how I actually put the song together, some of the settings that I used on the different instruments and vocals, and hopefully it'll give you some ideas and some inspiration if you're looking to record a song yourself in GarageBand. So let's jump into it. Oh, and if you hang around to the end, I've got a bit of a special treat. I'm going to play part of the original demo that I recorded just on my iPhone. So if you want to sort of hear what it sounded like, this track sounded like before I recorded it through an interface and just sort of the rough demo mix, then hang around for that. So here is the track. This is called In Time, as I said. The track itself has a piano, which was sort of the main riff that I first wrote for this song and kind of drives the song all the way through from start to finish, as you can see. We've got a couple of guitars here, so some clean guitar sounds. We've then got our distorted guitar sounds here. So both of those are sort of left and right guitar sounds as we go through the track. The drums, I've actually used the iPhone drummer for this track, so that's an interesting choice, and it was interesting to try and get the drums sounding right and some of the settings in there. There's a little string section there, string track. We have the bass and then the vocals. So the main vocal at the top there, and I used some of the, what was the Punchy Presence was the preset. I tried to use some of the GarageBand presets in here as well, and then some of the backing vocals as well through there. And last but not least, down the bottom there was an additional lead guitar that I added right towards the end just to give the track a little bit more punch as it came into the chorus there. So let's dive in. First, we'll just have a bit of a listen to the track as it is, and it sounds a bit like this.
Intoxication has got me under somebody's wicked little spell. Anticipation.
Okay, so there it is. So you can hear the piano and the guitars sort of start kicking off the song, and then the drums will come in, the bass, and then it sort of builds into the chorus, which will sort of show a bit of a little bit later. And then there's your lead vocals as well, obviously. So let's break it down instrument by instrument. So the first thing I actually laid down was a piano for this song. I kind of did it top to bottom, and you'll notice that my instruments aren't in order, and that's probably the first bit of advice I'd give you. And if you haven't checked out my top 10 tips for recording in GarageBand, one of them is to name and order your tracks, because this is a bit of a mess, but I wanted to leave it as it was so you can see that it is possible to do, but it just makes life a little bit more difficult. So the piano track was recorded using an actual keyboard as opposed to using the virtual keyboard, which made it a lot easier to record. And you can see it was recorded in 2 parts and 2 takes there. So if we tap again, let's edit. You can see here's the actual piano track that was recorded. And it is a little bit quantized there, so you can see that I have lined it up on the grid. And I used quantizing for some of this, although some of those notes are not quite there. So sometimes I use manual, sort of just shifting some notes around to get them if they weren't quite right, if I didn't play them right, and other times I use quantizing. So if you haven't used quantizing, I've got a video on quantization which you can check out as well if you want to learn how to do quantization on the GarageBand on the iPhone. So recorded the piano, laid that down throughout the whole track in those sort of 2 takes, and then jumped into the guitars. So let's just solo these 2 guitar tracks right here. So if I play these back, not record them, that wouldn't be a good idea. Let's go back to here, and we'll take it off the piano too. We won't solo the piano, let's play these guitar tracks. So if you're listening on stereo, you can hear that we've got 2 different guitar tracks using 2 different types of amp simulators here. So as we go through these videos, I'll show you some of the amp settings. I just don't want to show you the same stuff on every video. Let's just stop that for now. So I don't want to show the same thing on every video because there'll be a lot of repetition, but I recorded those directly in using my Steinberg UR12 interface and plugging my electric guitar directly in, and then just selected the amp simulators as the amp as the instrument, changed some settings, and the key thing I did there was to record 2 takes, so that was slightly different, so you got that sort of stereo feel, and push them to the left and the right, and then adjusted the guitar sound, so we had 2 different sounding guitars. So if you wanted to have a look at the panning on those, if we come in to, oops, I've gone completely the wrong spot. If we come into here, you can see here that this one's panned to the left, and this one's also panned to the left. And I've made a mistake there because what I did was put the clean guitars on the left and then the distorted guitars were both on the right. So there you go. I'd forgotten that I'd done that, but that was the sound that I went for in the end. So the clean guitars start on the left, so one is panned in the middle left, one's panned hard left, and then the distorted guitars kick in, one's panned middle right and one's panned far right. So that being said, let's jump down and play these distorted guitars. So we'll solo those at the middle of the first part. These both kick in. So you should be hearing that to the right side, and if we take the solo off there,
In time, all of this will be behind us. Everybody.
That's how it sounds in the mix. So there were those sort of 4 guitars, so a fairly simple sort of setup. Didn't take that long to do, but basically recorded the 2 clean parts all the way through, the 2 distorted parts all the way through, selected slightly different amps and settings, and then just made sure that they were sitting nicely in the stereo space when I mixed it towards the end of the song. Now, drums were a really interesting one here. I wanted to actually use the GarageBand drummer for this as opposed to doing my own drums. So throughout the 4 tracks, I used drummer for 1, for two in fact. I used the manual drums for 1, and 1 track doesn't actually have any drums at all. So there's quite a variety throughout the 4 songs. So for this one, because this is one that I did use drummer for, you can see here, and I'll do another video on drummer because there's a lot that you can go through here, but you can just see that throughout the different parts of the track. So if we tap on each of these, you can see that I just set this one for the toms with a kick and snare, and it was loud and simple. And that was just some trial and error, deciding which particular type of drums to use. If we tap through, you can see here, I brought the cymbals in, so I took it from the toms to the cymbals, and then brought us across here for the chorus. For the next verse, went back to the toms, and changed it back to slightly simpler. Very few fills on here as well. And then the end, we went loud and complex again with the cymbals back in and the kick and snare, and put a lot more fills in. So there was a bit of trial and error to get that to be the exact sound that I wanted in the end, but it works pretty well for the song, I think. And obviously, if you were going to make sure that you had exactly the right sound, you would go in and program the drums. I was recording an EP in 1 month. I wanted to make sure that I had a good sounding drum sound without spending a whole week just getting the drums right in this track. So that's what I went with. The one sort of cheat or hack I did use here was to actually add in some additional drums here. So there's at the very start here, and we'll just solo out the drums here and play this part. So I wanted a couple of bass drums or a couple of kick drums right there at the start, so I just added those in, and that was in one spot. And then here, where it comes to the build-up section for the chorus, I wanted that as well. So I just wanted some snares to come in just before there. If we just unsolo these and play back.
Way to turn, but in time, we can all be.
And again, listening back to it now, the drums are not sort of very present in this song. So in hindsight it's 2020, probably would have increased the drum volume and sort of punch that we got through with a bit of EQ. At the end, the song was really a guitar, vocal, piano-driven song. So the drums were just really there to sit with the bass and to create the sort of bottom end for the song. So again, didn't spend a whole heap of time on the drums, but I think the end result was not too bad with the drum sound there. I won't spend too much time on this string section because it was literally one note from memory. There it is. So what that was, stop that. So what that was is, as part of the second verse or chorus, depending which way you want to consider this song, I wanted to have, I had a distorted guitar that went all the way through, and then I wanted to have a little bit more of a sort of bass undertone, just to bring up and create some difference, because one of the key things with songwriting is that you want your first and second chorus or first and second verse to actually sound a bit different, and I wanted a fuller sound, so I added this in. So if we unsolo that and play.
Ignition can be the hardest part and leave you my repulsion.
So you don't really hear that. It's really just a pad that sits behind it, but it adds a little bit more fullness and body to that second verse or chorus as we play through. Coming down here to the bottom, we've just got the bass guitar and then the vocals and that additional guitar I mentioned. So the bass was simply using one of the bass amp presets here in GarageBand, and I plugged my bass again in through my Steinberg UR12, and then set to the bass amp, played my bass part, did a little bit of EQing and setting, but not a whole lot different there. So if I just play a little bit of that now.
Anticipation of what it.
And again, you can hear that there's not. I like it. It's a good bass part. I'm quite proud of that little bass part, but it's just sort of sitting behind and driving the song along. It's not sort of sitting up and have a real punchy presence, and that's sort of deliberate within this song to just that and the piano, and then of course the strings that we just showed just sort of sits and creates that undercurrent and that sort of feeling of tension underneath the nice high melodic guitars riffs that we have there. We'll get to the vocals last of all. But let's just jump down here to this guitar. So what I really wanted is an additional sort of lead guitar part to kick in, which is what I put this additional glam rock setting guitar. So again, plugging my electric guitar directly into the UR12 interface and then firing it up and selecting a preset here. And if we play that back.
And I don't know which way.
It's just a nice lead again that just sort of sits under and complements the chorus part there.
This will be behind us. Everybody has a chance to cry.
And then as we come back in, it's just a single note that's just again working with the strings, working with some of the other instruments, just to create that nice pad underneath that sounds like this.
Be the hardest part and leave you foaming at the mouth.
Yeah, so I got a little bit creative there to do a few bits there. So that's sort of the majority of the song. Last but not least, of course, is our vocals. And the vocals were split up as such. So we've got our lead vocal that sits on this track here. There's one word here where it adds sort of an additional punch of a word there, which I'll show you that in a moment, because that was it's a pretty cool way to get a bit of an effect just on one particular part of a song. This bit here was a bit of a double track, and you can see the volume's right down. It really just sits under and creates some texture. From memory, it wasn't sung very well either, so I'll show you that in a moment. And then we had our backing vocals, which sort of sat here to the left and the right. So for the first lead vocal, we'll just play that back in solo. And that kicks in right from the start.
Intoxication has got me under somebody's wicked little spell. Anticipation.
So you can hear that there's quite a lot of reverb, delay, and things on there. So I started with the preset for the vocals, which was the Punchy Presence preset, and then I went in and made some changes here. So you can see, if we go into the plugins and EQ, there's compressor, there's an effect EQ. The tuning enhancing is on here, which I didn't really put on many of the other vocals, but it came with the preset, some stereo delay, some tape delay, and some visual EQ. So if we take a look at the visual EQ, what I really did there was just push the bass down, because the rest of the song was quite bass heavy, and I gave the treble a tiny little tweak at the top there. Now have a look at some of my other videos, you'll know that I like the EQ. It's definitely a lot better in here, but it's not great in terms of having complete control over your EQ. The other sort of key setting is the compressor. So it took a while to play with this and get the threshold on the compressor right, the ratio, the attack, and the gain, and then the mix I've had at 100%. So it's a fairly compressed, fairly reverby kind of sound for this vocal. So I did spend a bit of time tweaking it, but I relied a bit on the preset that we had because I wanted to really put GarageBand to the test and see what it could do. I talked about this track here, and what this track has is just this one word, which when we play it here... Generations! So you can hear there that it's actually got it's a generation, so it's part of that particular line. And if I put it with the lead vocal and play... Generations! An uphill battle that... So what it is it's just copy of that word, just for that particular phrase that I've put on a separate track here. I've added some distortion. In fact, I'll show you what I've added. If we come into the plugins and EQ, so it's got some distortion on there, so a bit of drive to just get that distorted sound, and then it's got the track echo here, which is the delay. So it's a quarter note delay, which is what creates that repeating sound. So it just gives that particular word as a part of that phrase and some nice punch. So we'll come in here and I'll just play that section without the solos and play. Generations, an uphill battle. So again, it just does something a little bit different. So you're just hearing the same vocals all the way through, but that then just gives that little distorted kick and the delay that just gives it a bit of an edge there. We'll jump back in to the rest of the vocals. So this track I alluded to, and you get to the point where kind of forgetting what some of these tracks actually do. Pretty sure this is just my double track of my vocal. We could all be friends again, and maybe even best friends if we try. So I think that was like an attempt at some a little bit of harmony. I think it was sung slightly off tune, but again, it just sort of sits underneath that lead vocal and provides a little bit of extra body and punch. Won't spend too much time on that because it probably sounds pretty average. But let's grab these, which are our backing vocals, and have a listen to these that kick in this chorus section. And they'll come in any minute now. I should have gone to the... We can all be friends again, maybe even best friends if we try. So again, like most backing vocals, by themselves kind of sound a bit wrong and out of place. But if we throw that in the context of the mix, come back to there. But in time, we can all be friends again. Maybe even best friends if we try. In time, all of this will be behind us. Everybody has a chance to cry. So again, just creates that little bit of harmony that gives some interest through that particular part of the song. So it's not a song that's big on harmony. It's really simple, basic harmony. And again, these two are just the same again. One panned hard right, one panned hard left. So that is the crux of this particular song. So there's a lot more that I'll go into in the next 3 videos, but it's already a fairly long video. So I wanted to just sort of show you a little bit of the basics of how I put the track together and some of the options that I chose. In the next 3 videos, so the final 3 tracks, we'll go into a little bit more detail around how I got some of the vocal sounds, the guitar sounds, and how I mixed some of the tracks together to make sure that I could get that sound, and also some of the automation that I used for not only effects, but for things like removing breaths from vocals, which is a pretty important thing to do, especially when you have a vocal like mine that tends to have a few breaths in there. Now, last but not least, I did promise that at the end of the video, you would get a listen to the original version of this track. So I've got here my handy dandy iPhone 5S. So let's unplug that one. And just seeing a bit of the magic here that this is plugged in through my other interface. So this is the original track here. So you can see that this is pretty much all virtual instruments, including the guitars. It's got a manual drum that I put in there. Still got the couple of vocals with the backing, and then a second piano down there. And this was recorded sort of when I had a free moment, so I got an idea for the piano riff, and then I sort of added the guitar, and then I wrote some lyrics, and then I worked out a beat, and then I recorded it. So we're going to close out. So thanks for watching. I'll close out with a little snippet of the original recording. So I guess I wanted to do this because if it just shows that when I first recorded this and it sounded like this, obviously I knew that I had a long way to go, but you can actually go from here to a fairly good sounding recording using nothing but your iPhone and GarageBand. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Intoxication has got me under somebody's wicked little spell. Anticipation of what it could be has got me going round the bend. My addiction is so warm and comforting, don't want to be without it now. Alienation from all my memories, and I don't know which way to turn. But in time, we could all be friends again, and maybe even best friends if we try. In time, all of us will be behind us, everybody has a chance to cry. In time, everyone will have a home, and there will be enough to go around.
Hey, Pete here for Studio Live today, and welcome to the first video in this series where I'll be diving into my recently released EP that I made 100% in GarageBand on the iPhone. So in this video, what I'm going to be doing is giving you a tour, not so much of my studio, but of the instruments and devices and ways that I actually recorded all 4 of the tracks. And then in the following 4 videos, I'll be taking you one by one through each of the 4 tracks in GarageBand and actually showing you a bit more detail of how the songs were actually put together, constructed, and recorded. So let's jump into it now. And that is pretty much it. So you can see that it's a pretty humble sort of setup here. I'm not rocking any $2,000 guitars or thousands of dollars worth of equipment. It's a very affordable microphone interface, a few guitars that I've collected over the years, and again, definitely nothing there that's cost the bank. The only other thing that is of utmost importance is something like this. It's got my camera connection there at the moment, but a microphone stand, a nice solid microphone stand that's adjustable, because that will mean that you can get your microphones at exactly the right height and be able to record and get a really good sound, or the best possible sound that you can. The only other thing that I wanted to show you was something a bit fun. So on the last track, I needed something. It's a bit of a country song, I guess. I'm not really a country fan, but the last track was a bit more of a country sound, and I wanted to get a ukulele or a banjo or some sort of instrument. So I had a bit of a look around, and I decided I would borrow this one from my daughter. And this is the actual banjo track, not banjo, this is the actual ukulele track that you hear in the last song called Home. And it's actually tuned to an open G tuning, just because I can't play the ukulele and I wanted to add that in. So that was just a little bit of fun. So that's it. That's all of the instruments and equipment that I used, as well as my trusty iPhone 6S, which you'll be seeing in the next video. So stick around. The next 4 videos will be going through the 4 tracks from the EP, and I'll be going through and showing you what I did within GarageBand, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up some ideas for your next project, and that'll help you record a song really soon. So this is Pete for Studio Live today, and I'll see you soon.